Hello, everyone. This is Coach Clayton, and this is my Women's Empowerment Interview episode. And today we have Parm, and Parm is going to discuss her journey of overcoming obstacles in her life personally and professionally. Hey, Parm, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Good, very good. Now, Parm, I'm an accountability coach, and the reason why I created this video podcast was to create a place for women to come to or join each week to be inspired and empowered because we have so much going on in this world. And I think that this is a safe place to come to inspire. So welcome again.
Thank you. I do feel very safe. I have to say, as I was filling out your form, there was just this
Mhm.
very safe, encompassing vibe. So I am a little
Nice.
nervous. I'm going to put that out there. I'm a little nervous, but I feel taken
Okay,
care
it's
of.
okay to be nervous. It's okay. Yes, feel whatever you need to feel. That's what I always say. So that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Now, Parm, your background really intrigued me as a spiritual teacher. I'm like, I have to find out what exactly is a spiritual teacher. What exactly does Parm teach, and how is this going to inspire women, which I know it well. So tell me a little bit about being a spiritual teacher. How did you become a spiritual teacher?
Absolutely. So, a spiritual teacher is someone who, at least in my kind of definition in my world, is someone who leads people through self limiting beliefs, through challenges, guides people to release everything that's holding them back, whether that's emotions or physical situations or whatever is going on in their life, and leads them to higher states. I want to say higher states of consciousness, but the equivalent of that would be higher states of equilibrium. So finding things like inner peace and finding fulfillment and finding purpose and driving towards a higher goal in life and not just being stuck in this 9 to 5 kind of routine and rut that we've been trained to be in. And my journey here has been it's it's really a roller coaster, but what inspired me to do this is really all of the challenges and all of the things that I myself have been through, because I had found myself in that position a couple years ago where I thought, what is the point of me even getting up in the morning? Like, in society, I'm playing such a replaceable role. Like, what makes me special? Like, why am I doing this? Anyone can do this. There's no purpose to this. And so that was one of my biggest challenges. And I remember feeling so alone and so stuck and feeling like nobody would understand, because anytime I tried to talk to anyone about it, they'd be like, yeah, well, these are just things that you have to do anyways. And it was like nobody understood the
Mhm.
depth of misery, It was like I couldn't get up. I mean, I could. I knew I had to, but it was
Mhm.
really difficult for me to
To
do
get
that.
up.
And yeah, and so eventually I quit my job and I started pursuing yoga. So I think I forgot to mention that, the way
Okay.
that I lead people through their challenges is through yoga, meditation, and breath work.
Oh.
And yoga had always been something that brought me peace through every stage of my journey. And so at this point, when I had no idea what to do and where to turn, I was like, okay, yoga brings me peace and makes me feel like the world is not going to erupt in flames. And so let me practice. And I
Mhm.
did. And actually, since that day, I've been practicing every single day. And that's really what's moved me forward into this place where I can help other men and women.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Parm, when you had indicated that it was hard for you to get out of bed sometimes because it's like, what's the point?
Mhm.
That is what a lot of us are experiencing, which is like career burnout. It could be career or personal burnout when you're like, what is my purpose in life?
Mhm.
What is the point? And I love how you said replaceable role. You felt like it
Mhm.
was a replaceable role. And when you feel that way, it's like you're not contributing what your true gifts are,
Yeah,
which is like,
exactly.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, I know that you said that you help people find their inner peace or their inner purpose through yoga, meditation, and breath work, right?
Mhm.
But what would be some suggestions that you would give someone who is on their own right now? Like they haven't reached out to you yet, which they definitely should, but they haven't reached out to you yet. And just with all of these things that's in the news and what's going on, how can they find inner peace?
So the very first thing that I would recommend is to become aware of what disturbs that peace. So whether it's people, whether it's a certain type of entertainment, including the news, whether it's certain types of music that, makes you feel really erratic, these things, as soon as you eliminate them, your mind comes into a more settled state. And
Mhm.
from there, you're able to think more clearly, and that awareness continues to rise. And then you can start to notice more things that disturb you, right? Whether it's friendships that seem to bring you joy, but actually bring you lots of misery, confusion, anger. So, the first thing that I would say is to get rid of all of these things from your life. And then focus on yourself. Sometimes we're so focused on making the people around us happy that we don't think about ourselves. Like, what about you, right? What makes you happy? What passion have you let go of, or do you not make time for, that brings you that peace of mind and that stillness and that space? And make space for that in your life. And when you start doing that, you'll start to see that, that peace, that state of peace starts to rise up more and more. So that's the first thing, before even getting into the more spiritual and the deeper stuff. And then, once you feel more settled, then you can start to seek things like yoga, prayer, meditation, communities. Maybe you do Bible studies or some form of that, if you're not Christian, or if you don't follow the Bible. It can be any sort of scriptures, kind of, these things that give you this higher wisdom and this higher peace and this inner knowledge of who you actually are and why you're here.
I love that. I love that. And I love that, especially the first step, eliminate what disturbs you. And a
Hmm.
lot of times we don't reflect. We're so go, go, go. So that we don't sit with ourselves, by ourselves, to reflect, to say, what does disturb my peace? You
Hmm.
know? So that is key. That really hit with me, is to disturb what's disturbing your peace. Amazing. Amazing. So when you let me rewind back a little. So when you felt like your role, you were in a replaceable role,
Hmm.
right? And then you decided that you quit your job.
Hmm.
Okay. So then how did it just come to you that you were going to be a spiritual teacher, or how did that?
No, goodness, no.
Sounds like, I wish I could get that type of intuition.
When I quit, I had no idea. I was working in my field and what I studied, which was engineering, something very practical, and there's no real space for anything else outside of that. And when I quit, I was like, oh my goodness, like I have no idea what I'm gonna do. Like there is nothing. And let me just backtrack. When I was in that state, I remember I had gone up every venue. Like I had tried to find that inner peace and that fulfillment in my relationships, in academia, in my work, in travel, in my friendships and family, in everything. And I didn't find it. I felt that, whenever I achieved something or I hit some milestone, then there was more, right? Like a desire was fulfilled, and now there's more, and now there's more. And these people are never happy. And, my work always wants more, or whatever it may be. And so it was at that point I was like, you know what? I give up. I give up all of this stuff. I'm not going to pursue this anymore. I don't care. I'm just going to sit home and I'm going to practice yoga, and that's
Mhm.
it. Eventually I decided to take my practice deeper, and I decided to do a a teacher training. And just for myself, at that point I didn't even want to teach. I just wanted to do it for myself, to make my practice deeper. And that's kind of when, that snowball started to grow and started rolling on its own, because once I put all those pieces in place, then I got invited to do this, or I was told about this breath workshop that I attached to my yoga practice. Then I was invited to an ashram, which is a really, really spiritual place. I met my guru, who's an enlightened master. Then I did the yoga teacher training later on and so many other trainings. And eventually I came home and I'm like, I'm going to start a company. I've been falling forward. I'm telling you, there's no planning involved. None.
Wow. So when you decided to, let's talk about conventional norms. So when you decided, you're an engineer, you said, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm sure your parents were like glowing about, I have a daughter that's an engineer. So tell me a little bit about that when you decided to tell them, I'm done with this engineering thing. I can only imagine.
Yeah. My parents are very traditional, they're very traditional Indian parents. And, for them, it was be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And I chose one of them.
Yeah.
And then, the first kind of shock to them was when I decided after I graduated, I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go travel for a year and I'll see you guys. I'll see you when I see you. I actually bought a one-way ticket. I didn't know it would be a year or they were really upset. I remember one time I was like sitting in the Amazon, just kind of hanging out. My dad called me. He just like didn't even say hello. He's like, when are you gonna get married? I was like, whoa. Like just so angry and so worried. And he's like, come home and get married and go to work and do the things that you're supposed to do essentially. And so they did not take it well. Let me just say that.
Wow. The reason why I ask you is that I often think of my two girls. I have I have a daughter that's a biomedical engineer, and I have a daughter that's in medical school. And I'm big on following your dreams, but I always tell them make money too. So I think I'm more in the middle. I'm not as traditional, but I just wanted to see what your parents had to say. And I'm sure that they're happy now that you're happy. You know what I mean? Is that the case now, or are they still trying to understand the path?
Sometimes they'll kind of throw it out there like, Parm, you've been doing this for a couple years, and if you're not making enough money, maybe you should get a job. But it's never as strong as it was before because they see how dedicated I am and how happy this makes me. And so you're right, they're happy that I'm happy.
Nice. So tell me a little bit. You said that you traveled for a year. Where did you go?
I went to South
I can
America.
live vicariously through you. I like to take of this.
So I started off in Peru, and I kind of just explored South America. Again, there was no plan. I went to Bolivia for a little bit. I got robbed anyways, but that was actually a really good thing. I mean, in the end, it turned out to be a blessing. I went back to Peru because I learned how to be a traveler instead of a tourist. And so I went back to Peru. I learned Spanish, and then I started to mingle more with the people who actually live there. Because I mean, if you go, you can always find a ton of English speaking people and not mix at all, right? But that wasn't what I wanted to do. That wasn't the way that I wanted to travel. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't me. And so again, I was looking for a place where I belonged, right? I was looking for this belongingness and to not feel so alone. And so I learned the language, the culture, and everything. And from there, at some point, I went home. I got I got a cell phone. I got my credit cards because I had gotten robbed. And then I came back. I went back to South America. I went to Ecuador for a little bit. I stayed in Colombia for a long time. I really liked that place. Then I went to Brazil. And then, by then a year had passed, and I was like, okay, what am I doing with my life? It's funny because I thought that, in the movies, you see people who travel, they have a great time, and they come home, and then they sit and they work for the rest of their lives. And so at some point when I was traveling, I started to feel that same kind of like feeling of discontent, right? Like there's an interest with meeting new people and finding new places and discovering new things. But eventually you get tired of that too. Like, okay, how many new things am I going to eat? Like, how many new people do I have to have the same conversation with? Like, at some point you get tired. And so a year later I went home, and that's when I started that job. I was working at a startup in my field, and 6 months later I was like, I can't do this, and I quit.
I love it. I love it. Now, you said that being robbed was a good thing because I always,
Mhm.
sometimes in tragedy, there is good things that come out of it. Why was it a good thing to you? Or why
So
did it turn out to be a good thing?
so it turned out to be a really good thing because it helped me break out of my shell a little bit. Because I remember walking around, I had my coat all zipped up, I was holding onto my purse and just walking around like, really like I stood out like a sore thumb, right? Like that definitely had a huge target on my back when I was like that. But being robbed and not having my cell phone, so I lost my cell phones, my credit cards, and the cash that I was carrying. And I still had my debit card, so I still had access to funds.
Good.
and and I was able to cancel my credit cards and get all my money back. So I just lost the cash and the cell phone, so it was okay. But before that, I had been stuck to my cell phone, right? I didn't really make the
Um,
effort to go out into the world and to be vulnerable in that sense, right? I always just kind of stayed to myself with this feeling of safety of being connected through my phone to the world. But when I lost my phone and when I lost most of my funds at the time, it forced me to think about travel in a different way. Like there are so many different ways of traveling, right? Like people think travel is super expensive, but I was in South America for a year and I kid you not, I didn't spend more than like two, maybe 3 grand max.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and most of that was on flights and like actually coming back to Canada and all of that. Like
Yeah.
traveling there is super cheap. Like living is super cheap. I
Wow.
yeah, I volunteered. I, made so many friends abroad. And we had so many experiences, and I never would have had that if I had stayed with my cell phone and my credit cards and like,
Mhm.
went for that high life. Like, no, wouldn't have happened. So it was definitely
Wow.
a blessing in disguise.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And I liked how you said that I was connecting, but it was through my phone
Mhm,
versus like putting the phone down and actually connecting
mhm,
with the people that are right in front of you. I love that.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yes. So for if there's someone, there could be a young woman that is or gentleman that's getting ready to graduate from college similar to you, what advice would you give them, as far they know that they're not ready to go into the work field, right?
Mhm, mhm.
What advice would you give them?
So for me, like when I came back from traveling, I felt that everyone should travel. Like everyone should put themselves in that situation at least once,
Mhm.
right? In the situation of having to learn how to swim, right? Being
Yeah.
thrown in the deep end and having to learn how to swim. Because I mean, otherwise you live this sheltered life and you just kind of live like in a box. You know what I mean? Like you don't really
Yes.
live, you just exist. And
Mm.
I would definitely say that if you already know that you're not ready, if you know that it doesn't excite you, like if your work excites you, that's amazing. Like follow your dreams, right? Go for it. But
Mhm.
if you're in the same kind of bucket that I was, where I wasn't feeling it, I felt like this is a waste of my time and a waste of my life. Like, what am I doing? Then you have to listen to that sooner rather than later, because that feeling, I'm telling you, does not go away
Mm.
until you address it, until you sit with it, listen to it, hear what it's telling you. It doesn't go away. So take take the time off, right? Take a year off, take whatever you need and listen to yourself, right? Do what you
Mhm.
need to do before coming back and living and being practical and making money and doing all the things. But you have to
Mhm.
listen to yourself.
Palm, I stand corrected. It could be someone my age that could take take that
Yeah.
advice, because it's like you said, it is like living in a box. And there's so many, I can say I'm African American, and there's so many, especially like African American women, that wouldn't even think about taking a year off of work,
Mhm.
take a year off of work to travel. And thinking about you saying that, you didn't spend any more than like $3,000 to say $4,000, you can actually do this economically.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to break
Wow.
the bank. Like especially South America, like it's so cheap. I mean, like
Mhm.
It's crazy. And to be fair, I volunteered.
Okay.
Like in hostels, like you can volunteer. They'll give you breakfast. I mean, some will give you food throughout the day or just breakfast and a place to sleep. And like that's your main expense, right? A place to sleep
Yeah.
and meals. And if you have that covered, then you can spend your money in experiences and other things. And so
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to travel. You can camp. Like I hitchhiked for like a while, like a month. I don't know if it was a month, but it was a
Mhm.
while. And so in that sense, I wasn't spending any money except for on food
Wow.
and, like so many ways to do this stuff.
So when you say, so you were volunteering at a hostel to do things in exchange
Hmm.
for payment or what?
In exchange for the bed and for the food. Yeah.
Oh,
So they don't pay you. I mean, I'm sure there are things that you can do for them to pay you, like if you want to give more of your time. But I
okay.
mean, I wasn't there to make money. I was there
Yeah.
to to be with myself.
Okay. I love this. This is giving me a little inspiration, Parm, to do something different eventually.
That's great. I
I'll
love
put it
it.
on my bucket list for sure. Okay, nice, very nice. So, what is your biggest takeaway, Parm, that you would tell other women that right now they're going through so much? They're seeing so many things on the news,
Mhm.
like how to center themselves. Like, what is your biggest takeaway that you would give to them?
So, in terms of how to center yourself, the main thing that your main tool here that will always be with you is your breath. If you
Mhm,
tune into your breath, if you take even just simple, long, deep breaths, long, deep belly breaths, and
mhm,
you observe the movement of your belly, observe the movement of your breath. And
mhm,
if you do this for 5-10 minutes daily, you're going to notice a difference. You're going to notice that your mind settles, this restlessness
mhm.
leaves the body, leaves the mind, and you're just in a much more centered place. And especially as women, I mean, even the thought of taking a year off, you said that, right? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that. Same here, like
Mhm,
as a young Indian girl who was definitely not even allowed to leave my house when I wanted to. It's not the first thing that comes to mind, right? But
mhm.
these are all societal expectations. I mean, anyone can do it. And I definitely had friends who did do it. And so I was inspired by them. And hopefully I inspire you. But this is something that is accessible to everyone. And sure, as a woman, you need to take more precautions. But
Mhm.
I mean, we're so strong and resilient, and we've already been through so much BS in our lives that we deserve to give ourselves this, right?
Yes.
Anything. We deserve to give ourselves anything that we want. I mean, we spend our
Mhm.
whole lives giving to others. When
Mhm.
will it be our turn? That was actually one of my biggest driving things, was like, I spend all my time giving and giving and giving and giving to others, and I'm left drained at the end of the day. But what about
Yes.
me? Who's
Yes.
going to give to me? Like, when will it be my turn to receive? And finally, I decided, you know what? I'm going to give to myself. I'm not going to wait for
Mhm.
anyone to give to me. I'm going to give to myself, and they can wait.
I love it. I love it. So what do you say when your parents ask you about marriage and stuff now? Are you still like I'm waiting?
I'm open with them. I tell them the truth. I tell them that, my company is not in a place where I have space in my life right now for a partner, and I would prefer to find my own as to having an arranged marriage, right? Because they don't know everything that I want, and I don't think they'd be able to find everything that I want. So
Mhm.
I'm honest with them. Like, I am on the lookout, but it's not like a 24/7, like I gotta find a man.
Mhm. Nice.
I know when the
Nice.
time is right, it'll happen.
Exactly. Parm, how can the viewers find you online if they want to find out more about your spiritual teaching?
Yeah, so I have a website called parmsyoga.com, and I'm also on Instagram at the same handle at parmsyoga.
Parm's Yoga.
Yeah.
Okay, Parm's
So that,
Yoga.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Parm, it's absolutely a pleasure speaking to you. And you are really giving me the thought that I am going to take a sabbatical for a year, eventually, and travel, because I mean, I've always been in Massachusetts, and of course I've traveled, but I want to be able to see the world consistently for a year. I'm going to give myself a year like you did.
Yay! And if I may, one place that I would recommend if you're open to volunteering,
Okay.
so ashrams, so the place that I mentioned that I was invited to, an ashram, is a very spiritual place and is very safe. So by that I mean, like, you know, they'll provide you with healthy meal options, with a good safe place to sleep. Like, they're generally very, I don't want to say they don't have like fences around them, but just the energy there will keep you safe and will make you know that you're taken care of and all that. So an ashram is definitely a great option, and there you can find them all over the world.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I will also post it in our description as well. So thank you. Parm, it's been a pleasure. An absolute pleasure. I feel it. Thank
The
you.
feeling is mutual. Thank you.